Walk through your home for a second. Slowly. Open the drawer in the kitchen, the one that never closes all the way. There's a cable in there. You don't remember what it charges anymore. Behind it, a remote for a device you gave away 2 summers ago. Move to the closet. The jacket with the tag still on it. The gadget that promised to change your mornings and instead changed nothing. 3 water bottles. A box you've moved between 2 apartments without ever opening. You know exactly what I'm describing, don't you? And here's the strange part. 24 centuries ago, a barefoot man wandered through the loudest, richest marketplace in Athens, surrounded by silver and silk and spices from the edges of the known world. People expected him to want things. Instead, he stood there almost amused, and what struck him wasn't anything he longed to buy. It was how many things he could be perfectly happy never owning at all. His name was Socrates. He didn't leave behind a system, or a single book in his own hand. He left questions. Sharp ones. And one of them fits your hallway closet better than any home organization video you've ever watched. You already know the pattern, because you live inside it. The shopping bag that never got unpacked. The "I'll deal with that later" pile that quietly became furniture. The corner of the garage you stopped looking at directly. You don't actually use most of it. You know you don't. And still, somehow, getting rid of it feels almost impossible, like the thing is holding onto you instead of the other way around. Most people explain this away. Not enough storage. Too busy. I'll sort it on the weekend. But Socrates wouldn't have asked how to organize it. He'd have asked something far more uncomfortable. He spent his whole life chasing 2 words carved into the temple at Delphi: know thyself. So picture him standing in your living room, looking at the stack of things you never touch, turning to you with that maddening calm, and asking, what if none of this is about the objects? What if every unused thing in here is a question about you that you've been avoiding? That's where we're going. 6 reasons your home keeps filling with things you never use, and not one of them is really about the things. Stay until the last one, because it quietly flips the whole idea of owning more, inside out, and once you see it you can't unsee it. Start with the most innocent one. The someday. You keep the bread maker because someday you'll bake. The language textbook because someday you'll be fluent. The dress 2 sizes down because someday it'll fit again. Notice the move, you're not keeping an object. You're keeping a future version of yourself, and the object is the proof that version still exists. Throwing it out doesn't feel like losing a thing. It feels like admitting that person isn't coming. So you hold on, not out of need, but out of fear. And here's where Socrates leans in. He noticed that people rarely fear the right things. We dress up fear as prudence and call it being responsible. So ask yourself plainly, are you keeping it because you'll use it, or because letting go means facing who you actually are right now? The drawer isn't full of supplies. It's full of postponed goodbyes. Which leads to the second reason, and it's a slippery one. You didn't buy the object. You bought a person. You bought the running shoes because you saw yourself as someone who runs. The expensive cookware because you'd be the kind of host who cooks for friends. The camera because you were going to become the person who notices beautiful things. The object was never the point, it was a costume for an identity you wanted to wear. Socrates had a word he circled constantly: doxa. Opinion. Appearance. The image of a thing rather than the thing itself. He spent his life pulling people away from the flattering image and toward the harder truth underneath. So the question he'd hand you is brutal in its simplicity: is this who you are, or who you wanted strangers to think you are? Because a home full of unused identities isn't a home. It's a graveyard of people you almost became. Now the third reason, and this one you won't even remember doing. The purchase you never examined. Be honest about how most of it arrived. You didn't sit with a decision. You were tired, or bored, or it was 11 at night and the screen made it frictionless. One tap. It showed up. You felt something for about 4 minutes. Then it joined the pile. Socrates said something the court of Athens never forgave him for, that a life nobody examines, a life run on reflex and autopilot, isn't really worth living. He meant your choices. The small ones. The ones you make without noticing you're making them. So he wouldn't scold you for buying. He'd ask, did you ever actually choose this, or did it just happen to you? And notice how rarely you can answer. You can recite the price, maybe the day it arrived, but not the reason, because there wasn't one, not really. There was a mood, and a checkout button, and the friction had been engineered down to nothing. Most of your clutter was never a decision. It was the absence of one. And absence, it turns out, takes up an astonishing amount of physical space. The fourth reason is quieter and a little sad. Every object you can't release is a decision you're refusing to make. The gift from someone you've grown apart from. The hobby you secretly quit. The paperwork from a chapter you'd rather not reopen. You don't keep these because they're useful. You keep them because deciding what they mean would force you to admit something true. Socrates built his entire method on this exact discomfort. He'd ask a man a simple question, then another, until the man's own answers contradicted each other and he had to face a truth he'd been dodging for years. Your clutter does the same thing, only it never says the words out loud. So look at the thing you keep moving from shelf to shelf and ask what Socrates would ask: what am I not letting myself decide? Because a postponed decision doesn't disappear. It just rents a room in your house. The fifth reason cuts closest to home. The object is standing in for a feeling you won't name. We hold on to things to hold on to what they meant. The concert ticket. The chipped mug from a kitchen that no longer exists. The shirt that still, faintly, smells like a person. There's nothing wrong with memory. But somewhere along the way the object becomes a substitute for actually feeling the thing, easier to keep the mug than to sit with what the mug is about. Remember those 2 words at Delphi. Know thyself. Socrates believed the hardest knowledge in the world wasn't about the stars or the gods, it was about what's happening inside you, right now, that you can't quite admit. So the question lands gently this time: is this object carrying a feeling you've never let yourself actually feel? Look at it for a moment longer than usual. Notice that you're not really looking at an object at all, you're looking at a moment, a person, a version of your life, pressed flat into something you can hold. Because some things we keep because we love them. And some we keep so we never have to grieve them. The danger isn't the keeping. It's that the object lets you skip the feeling entirely, year after year, until you've built a whole house out of things you've never finished feeling. Which brings us to the sixth, the big one, the reason underneath all the others. You confused having more with being safe, and being safe with being free. This is the deepest lie of the full house. More options, more backups, more just in case, and surely that means more security, more freedom, more life. But walk back to that Athenian marketplace with me. There's an old story passed down about Socrates standing among all those goods, and what he marveled at wasn't abundance, it was the strange relief of realizing how many of these things he simply did not need. He'd noticed something most of us never do: every possession is also a small leash. It has to be stored, maintained, worried about, insured, dusted, defended, eventually dealt with. He thought the real work of a human life wasn't accumulating around the self, it was tending to the self. The soul, he called it. Caring more for who you're becoming than for what you can pile up around you. So the question that ends the list is the one that reframes everything: is all of this making you freer, or is it quietly making you its caretaker? Now step back and look at the whole house at once. Because here's what I think Socrates would really say if he stood in your doorway. The clutter was never the problem. The clutter is the evidence. Every unused object in your home is a question you haven't sat with. The someday you won't face. The person you wanted to be. The choice you never made. The decision you're dodging. The feeling you won't name. The freedom you traded for the illusion of safety. You don't have a storage problem. You have a self-examination problem, and the wonderful, terrifying news is that those are far easier to solve than they look, because they were never about the things. This is the part nobody selling you organizing bins will tell you. You can throw all of it out tomorrow and the pattern comes back within a year, because the pattern doesn't live in the closet. It lives in the questions you keep refusing to ask. Tidy the house and you've cleaned a symptom. Examine the life and the house starts to take care of itself. That was always Socrates' strange promise, not that the right answers would set you free, but that the right questions would. He believed the unexamined life crushes you so slowly you mistake the weight for normal. And a home full of things you never use is just that weight made visible, sitting on shelves, filling drawers, waiting in boxes you keep meaning to open. So I'll leave you where we started, standing in your own home, looking at that one object you already thought of 3 minutes ago. The one you can picture right now. You don't have to get rid of it tonight. Socrates wouldn't tell you to. He never told anyone what to do, he only ever asked. So this is his question, handed to you across 24 centuries, not, why do you still own this? But, what is it that you're really keeping? Sit with that one before you sleep. And before you go, tell me down in the comments which of the 6 hit you hardest. Be honest. The someday, the costume, the autopilot, the dodged decision, the unspoken feeling, or the leash you mistook for freedom. If even one of them landed, send this to the person whose house came to mind while you watched, you know exactly who. And if you want more questions like these, the kind that follow you around for a few days, you know what to do. I'll see you in the next one.